Hello, everyone. Welcome to a hopefully pretty short webinar looking at some of the main themes and practices of Rosh Hashanah that you'll hopefully be celebrating with your communities at Moshe House and in your other communities. So we'll get started. So Rosh Hashanah kind of has different themes and symbols that you often see. One is the shofar that we blow, which we'll talk a little bit more about very soon. There's the honey that we have for a sweet new year, accustomed to have honey with apples or honey with challah or honey with anything to make it a sweet new year. There's kind of the experience of deep prayer that we do in synagogue. There's a lot of kind of time traditionally spent in synagogue or shul or temple for prayers, for tefillot. And then this idea that on Rosh Hashanah we are crowning God King, which is something that we'll also unpack a little bit. But that's really one of the main themes of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, where we kind of remind ourselves, like, oh yeah, who's in control? Not me, but something greater than I am. So the Jewish New Year looks like this. It's 2 days that are holiday, kind of celebrated like Shabbat, and whether you're in Israel or outside of Israel, it's always 2 days. And on the first day, you do a ritual called tashlich. Tashlich means to cast away, tashlich, lishloach. And the idea is that using specific prayers or poems, which I have some links for you that will be coming with this webinar, to see the words, but you stand by a body of water that's flowing, and you either say this prayer, and if you want to symbolically throw, bread and little bread pieces in the water, or crumbs in the water, that's the idea of tashlich, to send your sins, cast your sins off. So that's done traditionally the first day, unless the little stars are there for, unless it's Shabbat. That for the first day Shabbat, then you do tashlich the second day. So you don't do tashlich on Shabbat. Now the service on Rosh Hashanah, it could be quite long, it could feel very boring, and you might have the experience of banging your head up against the wall. That is definitely a feeling that I have maybe a little bit too regularly on Rosh Hashanah, but I'm hoping to help a little bit through that. And, of course, it is a 2-day holiday, and so you're basically saying the same prayers the first and second. It's a little bit different, but in general, the format, and I think that the more we know about what to expect, it's a little bit easier to go through. But it's something to prepare yourself for these longer prayer services, and whether it's bringing some, reading material that speaks to you, that you could kind of be in synagogue and reading, or maybe you just want to spend some time sitting quietly and in contemplation, thinking over your year, thinking about different themes that we'll be, speaking about. There's many ways to spend time praying and not necessarily having to, read all the words. But here's some of the highlights from the service, and this is looking specifically at the morning service, which is really the long services in the morning. So we have morning blessings, Keda Zimra, which are psalms of song that, this is kind of your basic Shabbat service. There's the Shema that we say, the Amidah, which is a special Amidah for Rosh Hashanah, but still it's not that long. And so when we get into this repetition of the Amidah, where now it starts to be adding in some extra poems, some extra words for Rosh Hashanah. Then there's the Torah service, which we're all familiar with. That's a regular part of Shabbat or a holiday service. And here's where we really start to get into the lengthy part. There's the shofar blowing ceremony, which does not happen on Shabbat. There is Musaf, which is the extra prayer. It's an extra silent prayer. And then there's a repetition of Musaf with the shofar. And it's really with all this repetition and a very long Musaf and adding in the shofar blowing during Musaf that you really start to, if you don't know what's going on, it can feel very draggy. So when you show up, hopefully to hear the shofar blowing at synagogue or Beit Knesset, this is what's going to be happening on, that there's going to be a silent prayer, which is a longer prayer, but it's kind of showing up for the kind of like later part of the service. Still, it is, you know, you do spend many hours traditionally in synagogue. So here's a little bit of what's going on, especially in that musaf, in that repetition of prayer. So you could kind of, armed with knowledge, you kind of have a little idea what's going on, and hopefully that'll make it feel a little bit more meaningful, and maybe even a lot more meaningful. So the first part of musaf is called malchiot, and malchiot comes from the word melech or malchut, and again we're talking about God being king. What does it mean for God to be king? You know, the trepidation and the awe that we experience when we see a king, and of course it's hard today to imagine, you know, what it's like to see a king, but maybe if you live in a place where there's a queen, that might be a little bit easier to imagine. Oh, what would it be if I was face to face, you know, with the Queen of England, let's say? That would be pretty amazing, and you probably would feel, you know, all different sorts of, you know, strong emotions, nervousness, excitement, and if you were, you know, kind of meeting the President of the United States of America, what that would feel. So you want to kind of develop that emotion around being in the presence of something really significant. So another way of looking at melech, for those of you who kind of shy away from the monarchy or can't really jive with that idea, melech as king, there's a way of looking at melech where the mem, that first letter there, is symbolizing the moach, the mind. The lev, the second letter there, is symbolizing the lev, the heart or the emotions. And the chaf, symbolizing the kaved, the liver, or kind of like the gut area. So we have a word that symbolizes the mind, the heart, and the liver. And so it's really taking this idea of king and like bringing it back into the body, and it's kind of reminding us that there's an order of things, that you know, we can't let any one of these segments kind of run wild without the other. That the heart, you know, needs logic, and the gut works well, but the gut also affects our emotional world, our emotional life, you know, which is connected to, you know, our logic and reasoning. So maybe it's a way of becoming a little bit more intimate with the parts of us that we need in order to, you know, live out the year in a way that we want to, kind of to meet those goals that we want to meet those, you know, to be who we want to be. We need to involve, you know, all of us holistically. So that's a way of looking at melech that might be a bit more palpable for those that can't really grasp God as king, which could be kind of difficult. The second part of the musaf is zichronot, which comes from the word zizkor. Zecher is to remember, and you know, it's kind of an interesting thing, you know, to say, oh, we want God to remember us. But how do we say God, you know, God remembering us when, you know, we say God is omniscient, God knows everything. So does God forget? So it's kind of one of those paradox kind of questions, because how could God not forget and need to remember? So one way of looking at this is that, you know, the remembering is really for us. The remembering is feeling cared for. So it's kind of opening up our awareness to see that we're cared for in the world, you know, maybe by God, maybe by our community, maybe by those around us, know that we're not alone in the world, that our lives are lived, you know, greater than just us, and we're part of something bigger. And it's, you know, that remembering that we want to aim for on Rosh Hashana. So we have Malchiot, Zichronot, that's the second part, the kingship, remembering, and then the third we all know is Shofarot. Comes from the word shofar. It's the plural of the ram horn that we blow on Rosh Hashanah. So why do we blow the ram horn on Rosh Hashanah? Why do we blow the shofar? We say the call of the shofar represents two different symbols. One is the alarm clock, like to wake us up to who we are. Like, oh yeah, we have a mission in life. We're not just here lounging around, but we have a job to do, and you know, let's get to it and get working, get moving, and get living in the way that we want to. And the second is more of an existential idea of this like primal scream, this deep like kvetch inside, like, oi, you know, I can't believe that I've done the things that I've done. I can't believe that there's so much pain in the world. Oh, I can't believe that things are going as they're going. And kind of, again, it's connected to that waking up, but it's in a different way. It's a wake up from the real deep emotion that exists within us, that just, give us some space to lament and to, to really get into that. For the purpose of becoming aware of what is wrong with the world, for the purpose of becoming aware of what we have to do differently in our own lives in order to make the next year better. So we have Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. Those are the three sections of the Musaf. And so there's many things that you could do in synagogue if you're not happy with the words, even if you don't want to go to shul, but you want to spend time on Rosh Hashanah contemplating these themes. You could go somewhere and think about, who controls my life? How much of life am I in control of for myself? What's out of my control? What are the mysteries left in life for Malchuyot? And for Zichronot, you could say, think about the people in your life that you want to pay more attention to. Think about the people you have the strong, deep connections to. Think about when you feel supported by the divine, not supported by God, supported by the Jewish community, not supported by the Jewish community, many different things. And for Shofar, you could think about, how do I take steps to wake myself up to live my life as a better person? What do I need to pay attention to inside that deep pain so I can start to transform that deep pain into joy? And just to remember that the point of all of this is that it's really up to each one of us to make this a real moment. You could look at the whole thing as, oh, it's just something, the people have just been doing with no real meaning. And sure, if that's, what you want to do, then there's nothing wrong with that. But you have an opportunity here to join in really with a national, and not by national by place, but national by people. Shouldn't even use the word national. Strike that word out. By a kind of global identity practice. That's better. Global identity practice of this moment of this. This is a real experience of shifting from the past year to a new year, from the past self to a new self, from the past action to new action. And the more intentionality that you could bring that, let me take this as a real moment in my life. And let me imagine as best as I can and put as much faith that this matters, that this transition matters, the more meaningful and power it will have for the year as we continue, into the next year. So, Shana Tova Umetuka, have a sweet, sweet, sweet New Year, Happy New Year. And if you have any questions about events or practices or resource materials or anything mentioned, please email me. Also check out the link, the document that I'm sending with this link that will have resources for Tashlich, recipes for Rosh Hashanah, Challah, different stories that you could share at your Rosh Hashanah table and events. So, take as much advantage as you like to make this time as meaningful as you want for yourself. So, Chag Sameach.